Jaehaerys Targaryen is dead, but the showrunner just made a massive change to how they handle his body, and it completely flips the emotional stake of the Dance of the Dragons. In the books, Jace sinks into the sea, lost forever. In the show, Rhaenyra doesn't get to wonder. She gets a body, and a body demands an answer. Welcome to the turning point of the entire war. In today's breakdown, we are looking at a bloodless coup that turns deadly, a witch finally getting her prize, a queen's terrifying first kill, and a tiny hidden detail that proves George R.R. Martin was right all along. Let's dive into every hidden detail of Season 3, Episode 2. Right after the Battle of the Gullet, the very first thing we see is Baela bringing Jace's body back to Dragonstone on her dragon. This is a huge, deliberate change from the book Fire and Blood. In the books, Jace dies in the water. Rhaenyra never gets to bury him. She is left with a wound that never heals because there is a no body to mourn over. In the show, the writers said no. They forced Rhaenyra to look at her firstborn son, cold and dead on the dark stone floor. This changes everything about how Rhaenyra grieves. In the books, she turns cold because there is nothing left to hold on to. In the show, she sees the physical cost of the war right in front of her, and she has to harden her heart anyway. Now, here is the fascinating detail the show completely invented. Before they battled, Chase actually locked Rhaenyra in her room. He ordered Sir Lauren to keep her locked inside. Why? Because he wanted to fight in her place. He wanted to win the war for her. This never happens in the books. The show added this to make Jay's death even more tragic. His last act wasn't just brave, it was him rebelling against his own mom to protect her. That choice is going to haunt Rhaenyra. When she finds out Jace is dead, she doesn't scream. She acts like he is still alive. When Sir Lauren offers his own life because he failed to protect the prince, Rhaenyra coldly says, "That won't bring my son." But pay attention to what happens later. She tells the guard he can choose how he dies, not if he dies, but how. All her mercy is gone. By the end of the episode, her grief has already turned into pure ice. While Rhaenyra mourns, we jump over to Driftmark. Alan of Hull is walking through the dead, looking for Corlys Velaryon, the father he barely knows. Remember, Corlys was thrown overboard during the battle, sinking beneath the waves. Alan runs into Baela, and the show gives us a quietly heartbreaking moment. Baela grew up with Corlys as a loving grandfather and protector. Alan grew up totally ignored, so Alan asks her what kind of a man Corlys is. He has to ask a relative about his own father because she got the childhood he was denied. Since season 2, the show has been building up Alan's anger. He watched his father's ship come and go for years, knowing Corlys never came back for him. Now he is searching for the corpses for a man he doesn't know. But he finds him alive. Corlys is standing in the ashes of High Tide, his castle, his wealth, his entire legacy completely destroyed. In the book, the burning of a nearby town gets more focus, but the show makes it deeply personal. Corlys is watching his life's work turn to smoke. Standing in those ashes, Corlys offered Aline the only thing he has left to give, the Velaryon name. But here is the catch, and it's a massive one based on Westerosi law. Corlys doesn't actually have the power to do this. Only a king or queen can make a bastard a true-born son. Corlys is just the hand of the queen. He can ask nicely, but he can't sign the official paper. This means Alan's entire future depends on Rhaenyra surviving the war and agreeing to sign that decree. If Rhaenyra loses, Alan gets absolutely nothing. The show is planting a quiet tension here that will definitely explode later. We cut to the Vale for one of the most politically tense scenes of the entire episode. Rhaena Targaryen has fled to Lady Jane Eyre. She is in a deep trouble. She abandoned Rhaenyra's little friends. She flew a wild dragon named Sheep Stealer into the battle, lost control, and her dragon's fire might have actually killed her own sister's fiancé. She doesn't know the full damage yet, but she knows she cannot go home. So she begs Lady Jane for a safe place to hide. At first, Jane shuts her down cold. She refuses to anger the queen, but then Rhaena makes a counter offer. To understand this, we have to rewind to season 2. Last season, Jane Eyre swore loyalty to Rhaenyra on one condition. She wanted a dragon to protect the Vale. What did she get instead? Was 2 tiny hatchlings and 4 eggs. She was furious. She asked for a weapon of war and got a pet. So when Rhaena shows up with Sheep Stealer, a massive full-grown dragon, Jane instantly sees an opportunity. Rhaena isn't begging for charity. She is delivering the weapon Rhaenyra originally promised. The negotiation between them is incredible. It is perfectly polite on the surface, but underneath, it is pure steel. Jane has all the political power, but Rhaena has a giant fire-breathing monster. And in Westeros, a dragon always beats a fancy title. Jaime finally agrees to hide Rhaena, but with a massive catch. She tells Rhaena to stay completely out of sight. Why? So if a Queen Rhaenyra comes looking, Jane has built-in excuse. She can just say, hey, I can't tell a wild dragon where to go. This is a massive change from the books that quietly transformed Jane's character. In the books, Jane supports Rhaenyra simply because they are cousins. The whole dragon negotiation never happens. In the show, Jane is turned into a cold, calculating mastermind. She isn't helping out of family loyalty. She is extracting maximum leverage. And here is a ticking time bomb you might have missed. Rhaena mentioned that no one recognized her riding sheep stealer during the battle. Later, Rhaenyra actually thinks an enemy claimed a wild dragon. She has no idea it was her own stepdaughter. When Rhaenyra finally finds out the truth, how will she react? Will she see Rhaena as a traitor who abandoned her sons, or as a powerful dragon rider she desperately needs? We move to the Riverlands, straight into the bloody victory feast. The Lannister army has just been wiped out at the Battle of the Lakeshore. Jason Lannister is dead. The soldiers are celebrating and singing, calling the battle peace-filled. This is a delightfully dark detail pulled straight from the book. The slaughter was so massive that the Lannister corpses literally fed the fish in the river for days. It is a tiny, gruesome world-building detail that makes Westeros feel so real. Sitting around the feast are Daemon Targaryen, Oscar Tully, the commander of the Northern Forces, and a woman you definitely need to pay attention to, Alicent Blackwood. Black Aly isn't just a background extra. She will eventually marry Cregan Stark. And that marriage is a huge reason the North stays loyal later on. Suddenly the party is interrupted. News of Jay's death has arrived. Daemon is summoned back to Dragonstone so he and Rhaenyra can finally attack King's Landing. But before Daemon leaves, he has to make one last stop. He has to see the witch, Alyce Rivers, the price of Harrenhal. Alyce meets Daemon in the dark, and her words are chilling. She tells him his arrival is an omen, the end of many things and the beginning of others. Let's unpack that. In Season 2 finale, Alyce gave Daemon a vision of the future, the Night King, Daenerys Dragon, and his own death. So when she says the end of many things, she means Daemon's impending death. The beginning of others means the start of the Song of Ice and Fire prophecy, but Alyce didn't just come to be spooky, she came to get paid. She used her magic to help Daemon win Riverland's army. Now she wants her payment. She wants Harrenhal. Daemon actually laughed in her face, a random unnamed witch demanding the biggest castle in 7 kingdoms. He offers her gold and land instead, but Alyce refuses. She tells him that Harrenhal calls to her, and if you know the lore, this makes perfect sense. Harrenhal is built on magical weirwood trees. It is haunted, it is a magnet for dark magic. Before Daemon rides off, Alyce leaves him with one final terrifying warning. Do not come back here, remember why I called you. She is explicitly reminding him of his vision. She is telling him that if he returns to this castle, he will die. And the ultimate tragedy, he will. Now listen closer to the background music during this scene. The creepy little melody playing faintly under the dialogue is the exact same song Alyce hummed in Season 2 when she triggered Daemon's vision. It is a brilliant subtle detail. Everyone else in the show is playing the Game of Thrones. Alyce River is the only one playing the Song of Ice and Fire. Let's check in on the Green's absolutely dysfunctional road trip. In the latest episode, Larys Strong does something wild. He reveals King Aegon's true identity to soldiers from House Taunton to save their lives. They were being dragged to Dragonstone to face Rhaenyra's executioner. This is a 100% show-only invention. In the books, Aegon never gets captured by Rhaenyra's forces here. Larry's betrayal and his secret plan to smuggle Harrenhal gold to Ironbank and Bravos is completely new. In the show, it works beautifully. Larys is playing the long game. His cold strategy is to let Rhaenyra and Aemon destroy each other. Once the dust settles, he plans to roll back into King's Landing and put Aegon back on the throne. Classic Larry is playing both sides, but the plan hits a massive speed bump when an enemy ambush attacks their caravan. Aegon actually manages to get a quick kill here. It's a tiny reminder that he isn't completely useless, just mostly useless. They escape, and Larry still has enough gold to buy them a ticket to Bravos. But Aegon refuses to run away across the sea. Instead, he demands they go to Rook's Rest. Why? Because that is where his dragon Sunfire is. In the books, Sunfire survives the brutal battle at Rook's Rest but is left with horribly mangled wing, unable to fly. In Season 2 of the show, Kristen Cole basically said the dragon was dying and they left a guard to watch over it. Aegon heading there right now tells us one major thing: Sunfire is alive. And the bond between Aegon and his dragon, which is arguably the strongest bond in the entire lore, is about to take center stage. The show is actually flipping the map here. In the books, Larys hides Aegon right under Rhaenyra's nose on Dragonstone, and is Sunfire who does the impossible, dragging his broken body through the sky to find his rider. By sending Aegon to Rook's Rest instead, the show is reversing that journey. We are about to watch a crippled king crawl across the continent to find his crippled dragon. If the showrunners nail this reunion, it's going to be legendary. Now let's look at the King's Landing, where the real politics plotting is happening. Aemond has left the city, and Rhaegar is gone with him. Alicent tricked Aemond to fly Harrenhal to face Daemon. Why? Because she needed him out of the way so Rhaenyra could take the city without facing a massive dragon. This is the exact deal Alicent made with Rhaenyra at the end of the season 2. A bloodless coup. Open the gate, tell guards to stand down and hand over the city. In exchange, Alicent and her family get to walk away free. Step 1. Alicent meets with Luther Largent, the commander of the city watch. She knows he'll help her because years ago he served directly under Daemon Targaryen. That old loyalty is still alive. Step 2. The small council. Alicent calls a meeting and tells King's Guard Knight to fetch a trusted ally. But the knight betrays her. He warns Jasper Wilde, the Lord of Laws, that the Queen Mother is committing treason. This blackmail scene happens in the book, but it gives us one of the coolest Easter eggs of the season. Alicent defends herself against Jasper by hitting him with the turtle paperweight. The secret meaning behind the turtle is, in the show, the turtle is just the symbol of House Estermont, Jasper's rival. But in the real world, this is a massive nod to George R.R. Martin. As a kid, George kept pet turtles. He used to imagine them as rival lords and knights plotting and murdering each other for control of a toy castle. Those childhood turtle games were the literal inspiration for Game of Thrones. So that paperweight isn't just a desk ornament, it's a wink to the author. As for Jasper Wilde, in the books, his nickname is the Iron Rod because he is so stiff and corrupt. He actually had 29 children with 4 different wives, and the last wife literally died of exhaustion. So yeah, him being a blackmailer completely checks out. Just as things look terrible for Alicent, Grandmaster Orwell walks in and stops Jasper. Alicent coup is working, but barely. It is held together by a single thread. This brings us to the most heartbreaking scene in the episode. Helaena Targaryen. She is out in the courtyard, watching a caterpillar. If you have been paying attention to Helaena, you know her obsession with the bug is never just a hobby. Her bugs always predict the future. The caterpillar turns into a butterfly, symbolizing the massive change coming. Rhaenyra is about to take the throne, and Greens are about to fall. But there is a much darker layer here. Helaena is holding a book that shows butterfly from an island called Nath. In the Game of Thrones universe, Nath is famous for a horrific plague called butterfly fever. Anyone who visits the island dies a brutal death within days, sweating blood while their flesh rots off their bones. The name of the butterfly in her book is Alicine. Sound it out. Alicine sounds exactly like Alicent. The subtext is here devastating. Alicent is the butterfly. She is the plague that has poisoned everyone around her. Her ambition killed King Viserys. Her scheme got little Jaehaerys murdered. Her new deal with Rhaenyra will get her own father executed. She brings ruin wherever she goes. Think about Helena's track record with the bugs. The millipede predicted Aemon losing an eye. The spider predicted the civil war. The rats predicted the blood and cheese. The caterpillar isn't a sign of hope, it's a warning. Alicent walks up to her and drops the truth. She is standing down the guards, and Rhaenyra is taking over. Helaena looks at her and says, "You're going to die for some chickens." Someone is. In the books, Helaena goes completely insane with grief after her son is murdered and never speak like this, but the show gives her a total clarity. She is calling out her mother. Alicent's dream of escaping the castle to live a quiet life and raise chicken is completely fantasy. People are going to die for this mistake. For the first time in 3 seasons, Alicent finally admits the truth. She confesses that she isn't even sure Viserys actually wanted Aegon to be king. She admits she failed her sons, but begs to at least save Helaena. It's the closest thing to a confession of guilt we will ever get from her. Before Rhaenyra leaves Dragonstone, we get 2 massive scenes that set up exactly what is at stake. First, Daemon is absolutely furious. He chews at Hugh Hammer and Ulf for abandoning Harrenhal. They were supposed to stay there in case Rhaegar attacked, but they left anyway. Why? Because Aly's River told them they were needed at the Battle of the Gullet. Look closely at what Aly's is doing here. By tricking the dragon seeds into leaving, she leaves Harrenhal completely unprotected. That means when Aemond arrives, there are no dragon to stop him. She is purposefully clearing the path to get Aemond right where she wants him. Alice isn't just reacting to the war, she is manufacturing it. Next, Daemon confronts Mysaria. Their past is messy and Daemon doesn't trust her for a second. But Mysaria's goal is actually very simple. She hates the Hightowers. For her, it's personal. Otto Hightower promised her years ago that he would shut down the horrific child fighting pits in the slums of King's Landing, and then he broke his promise. She is fighting against a cruel system, and the Hightowers are the face of it. Before they head out, Mysaria brings Rhaenyra her crown. There is a deeply tender romantic energy here that the show has been building for a long time. Mysaria is totally in love with her queen. When Daemon questions her loyalty, Rhaenyra shuts him down instantly. I did not need your approval. The queen is done asking for permission. Meanwhile, we get to the plot twist that is going to change the rest of the season. Aemond arrives at Harrenhal on Vhagar. Criston Cole and the army thrilled. Aemond marches into the castle to claim it, just like Daemon did last season. But while Daemon spared the old castle and Simon Strong, Aemond shows absolutely no mercy. He murders Simon and his entire family in cold blood right on the dining room floor. But right before the slaughter ends, someone manages to sneak up and plunge a blade into Aemond's back. He collapses, bleeding out. And there is only one person in the entire castle who can save him, Alice Rivers. In the books, Alice just becomes Aemond's lover, while he occupies the castle. In the show, it's a transaction. Alice wanted Harrenhal, and Daemon refused to give it to her. Now dying Prince is bleeding at her feet. She is the only healer for Miles, and the question is, what will Aemond give her to save his life? This is the centerpiece of the episode. Rhaenyra Targaryen finally takes King's Landing. 4 massive dragons descend on the city. Syrax, Paraxes, Vermithor, and Silverwing. The everyday citizens panic. The show gives us a quick, heartbreaking flashes of the people caught in the crossfire like Hugh Hammer's wife and Ulf Strand from the Tavern. Rhaenyra's advisors beg her not to go into the field. But unlike the books where Rhaenyra stays safely behind, the show version of Rhaenyra is done hiding. She snaps the leash and flies right into the action. Down in the city, gold clocks instantly flip sides. Most of Aegon's men drop their weapons. The few who fight get brutally cut down by Daemon. Rhaenyra demands Aegon's head, but she doesn't know he has already escaped. But they do find something else. The Grand Maester leads Daemon down into the dark cells beneath the castle. What they find changes everything. They open the dungeon door and the biggest prisoner inside is someone absolutely no one expected. Otto Hightower. It turns out Larry Strong locked him up. The show hinted at this in the season 2 finale. But now, we see the full brutal truth. Larry threw Otto in the dark months ago as a gift for Rhaenyra whenever she took the city. Otto has been sitting in the pitch blackness for months. He has no idea what is happening with the war or his family. When they finally drag him into the light, his first words are incredibly bleak. I assume everyone else is dead. There is a tragic dignity to it. Otto Hightower, the master politician who outsmarted everyone for decades, was taken down by a guy with a clubfoot whom he probably never even noticed. In the books, Otto stays in the castle and is simply captured and executed as the first major traitor. The show gives his ending a much crueler twist. By locking him in the dark, the show strips him of his power. He doesn't go out fighting for his family, he goes out completely betrayed by them. Aegon is gone, so Rhaenyra needs to make an example out of Otto. Daemon, who has been telling her for years that mercy is a weakness, hands her dark sister. This is a legendary Valyrian steel sword built originally for Visenya Targaryen. By handing it to her, Daemon is giving her a legacy. He's asking her to do something she has never done before. Rhaenyra has ordered people to die, but she has never killed someone with her own hands. Otto Hightower deals. Rhaenyra lifts the sword, and she can't do it cleanly. It takes 2 brutal hands to take Otto's head off. This is a massive character detail. The show is telling us that Rhaenyra is not a natural-born killer. She isn't like Daemon, who effortlessly takes off another traitor's head in one clean swing right after her. Killing cost Rhaenyra something emotionally. Everyone is watching to see if she flinches. She doesn't. Blood pools on the floor. Rhaenyra's boots leave red footprint as she walks up the step and sits on the Iron Throne for the very first time. She looks out at the court and the entire weight of the world, the son she lost, the city she took, and the man she just hacked to death, settles onto her face. The final scene is a total gut punch. Alicent and Helaena are dragged into the throne room, and right in front of them is the headless body of Otto Hightower. This was never the part of the deal. Alicent agreed to give up the city to save her kids, but she never agreed to deliver her own father's severed head. There is a scary detail here. Helena's little daughter, Jahara, is completely missing from the scene. In the books, the little girl survived the war and marries Rhaenyra's son to unite the families. But with all the changes the show is making, her fate is now terrifyingly uncertain. The episode ends on a close-up of Rhaenyra's face as she looks down at Alicent and Helena. Her expression shifts from shock to something much colder. Will she honor her promise and let them go live a quiet life raising chickens far away? Or will she rule with an iron fist and crush the woman who started this entire war? The woman who walked into King's Landing is gone. The woman sitting on the throne now has blood on her hands. Let's wrap things up with one final mind-blowing layer that connects Helena's blood scene to the real world. If you follow the real-life drama behind the scene, you know George R.R. Martin hasn't been totally happy with some of show's changes, especially cutting off Helena's youngest son, Mailer. George actually wrote a blog post warning about the butterfly effect. He meant that making small changes to the story now will cause a massive unpredictable shift down the line. And what does the show do in this episode? They literally put a butterfly book in Helena's hand while she warns the someone is going to die. The showrunners are basically giving a meta nod to the author. Through Helena, they are acknowledging the small choices have giant consequences. Because of the show's changes like cutting out character or having Rhaena claim a wild dragon, the ending of this TV show might be completely different from the book we read. This single episode just moved the chess pieces more than any other arc since season 1. Going into episode 3, we have some massive questions. What happens with Aegon and Sunfire? What is Aerys River's plan? Will Alicent and Helena survive? Will the Iron Throne change Rhaenyra? Remember the vision Daemon saw last season? He saw his own death, he saw the end of the dragons, and now Rhaenyra is officially sitting on the blood-soaked throne. We are one step closer to the tragic future coming true. Different characters but the same human flaws and the exact same terrible cost. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think Rhaenyra lets Alicent and Helena walk free, or has the throne already started to change her? What do you think Aerys River really wants from Aemond? Drop your theories, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next breakdown.